Hi, and welcome back. So far, we've added a driver's sheet to our model, and we also have historical P&L and balance sheet data. It is time for some actual modeling, right? The Workings tab will help us separate inputs from the model's actual workings, the sheet where we do forecasting and make assumptions about the future. Then, I've also added another layer of separation to keep everything clean and organized. I've indicated that, in this part of the file, we will deal with Tesla's income statement items. And then, when it is time to address balance sheet items, we'll have a similar sheet with the title Balance Sheet Items. Okay, given that Tesla has 3 business lines, it would be optimal to add a third separator, indicating which business lines we are currently working on. First, we'll consider the automotive business line, Tesla's largest division, accounting for more than 80% of the company's revenues in 2017. How can we estimate Tesla's automotive revenues 10 years from now? Well, that's very easy. All we have to do is... I'm joking. Of course it isn't easy. There are so many unknowns. But this doesn't mean it can't be done. By the way, in this resources section of the course, I've attached a link to a very interesting article which helped me gain a good understanding of Tesla's upcoming new model releases. It also states the average price these vehicles are expected to be sold for and the number of deliveries forecasted. Please check it out. I'm sure it will give you a good idea where some of the numbers we will be working in this exercise came from. All right, let's agree on the following starting premise, please. Tesla's automotive revenue is a function of the number of vehicles it delivers and the average price these vehicles are sold for. Correct? Quantity times price equals revenue. Sounds okay. So, the first thing we need to calculate is the number of deliveries Tesla will achieve in the forecast period. But to do that, we need to figure out which models Tesla will sell over the next 10 years. The company currently offers Model S, Model X, and Model 3, but has announced a few other vehicles as well. Model Y is Tesla's small crossover vehicle, which is expected to be delivered by the end of 2019. But more likely, serious production will not start before 2020. Another very interesting car Tesla will start delivering at some point in 2020 is the Tesla Roadster 2, the renewed version of the company's first automobile, which is going to compete to become the quickest car in the world. In addition, Tesla has announced 2 electric vehicles with commercial application, the Tesla Pickup and the Tesla Semi. The difficult task here is to estimate the starting point for each of the models that are about to be introduced, and to apply an annual growth rate that is reasonable and resembles the pattern that was observed historically. Let's start with Tesla's existing models, okay? Please note that to the left we have actual figures related to Tesla deliveries. These figures will be easy to distinguish in our model, as they will always be colored in white, and the header will read ACT, standing for actual numbers. All right, in the first half of 2018, Tesla delivered a total of 26,620 Model 3s. This is a good achievement considering that, for the second half of 2017, the company delivered only 1,764 Model 3 cars. In September 2018, it was reported that Tesla ramped up Model 3 production and started producing more than 6,000 Model 3 cars per week. However, let's be conservative here and assume Tesla will have produced an average of 4,000 Model 3s per week during the second half of 2018. This is why I'll multiply 4,000 by 26, the remaining number of weeks until the end of the year. Of course, the sum of 2018 H1 and H2 gives us full year figures for 2018. Let's take a look at Model S and Model X. We've decided to group these together because they have a similar average price, and both models have been on the market for a few years now. Moreover, Tesla frequently reports Model S and Model X deliveries together. In the first half of 2018, Tesla sold 44,100 Model S and Model X vehicles, and the company's latest guidance has been that they expect to sell around 100,000 vehicles for the full 2018. This means Tesla expects to sell 55,900 vehicles in the second half of the year. This shows us that fewer Model S and Model X vehicles will be sold in 2018 compared to 2017. The primary reason are the company's production struggles in the first 6 months of 2018. Okay, we don't have any deliveries data for the rest of the models. I'll simply add zeros and continue the sum we have in column I. Very well. Quite intuitively, we don't have year-on-year growth data for any of the models besides Model S and Model X. I'll type NA for all other models, and we'll use the year-on-year percentage growth formula for Model S and Model X. In 2018, however, we can also calculate the year-on-year growth of Tesla Model 3, which was equal to 73 times the initial amount. Model S and Model X deliveries decreased by 1%, on the other hand. None of the other models will be delivered in 2018, so we can write NA. Okay, 2019. This is where we expect a few of the new Tesla models to be released, namely Model Y, Tesla Pickup, and Tesla Semi. Let's start from the top of the table and then gradually move downwards. If we assume that in the whole of 2019, Tesla will be able to deliver 5,000 Model 3s per week, which isn't impossible considering recent production improvements, we'll obtain a delivery figure of 260,000 Model 3s in 2019. Given that this is a 10-year model and we can't apply 50%, 30%, and even 20% growth rates for all years in our forecast period, we have to assume a rapid initial growth, especially in the first year when production ramps up, and a gradual slowdown. So our assumption here is the following. The first 3 years of all new models will be a lot like the growth rate of Model 3 in its first 3 years. Then we'll assume that the 2 years after the introduction phase will have a growth rate of 10%. Then the 2 years after that will have a growth rate of 5%. And growth from that moment forward will be constant at 2%, which accidentally matches the level of long-term inflation. One small issue is that we don't have 3 full years of deliveries for Model 3. To solve that, I'll manually forecast that in 2020, Tesla will deliver 8,000 Model 3 vehicles per week. After 2020, Model 3 deliveries will grow at 10% for 2 years. At 5% for another 2 years, and at 2% from that moment onwards. These growth percentages make it easy for us to calculate actual deliveries. All we have to do is multiply the growth percentage by 1 plus deliveries from the previous year. Model S and Model X have been on the market for several years now. Therefore, we can assume their growth will be at 2% for the entire forecast period. This isn't too conservative, given that last year Model S and Model X experienced a negative growth of -1%. Again, I'll obtain actual delivery figures by applying the growth for each period to the previous period delivery figure. We expect Tesla will be able to deliver more than 100,000 Model S and Model X vehicles per year during the forecast period. Perfect! Model Y will be introduced in 2019. It is expected to see a healthy demand and to be able to compete with hit vehicles like BMW X3, Toyota RAV4, Mercedes GLC and GLK, Nissan Qashqai, and others. So, let's assume that in 2019, Tesla will deliver the same number of Model Y vehicles as it did with Model 3 vehicles in 2017. And then, from that point onwards, we can easily assume the same growth trajectory as the one we planned for Model 3. It is simply unfolding later in time, see? Okay, this allows me to easily calculate the actual number of deliveries for Model Y. Production of the Tesla Roadster 2 will begin in 2020. This is a car Tesla has produced in the past. Furthermore, plenty of people have already pre-ordered the second one, so it wouldn't be too optimistic to assume Tesla will be able to deliver 500 vehicles in 2020. We are not going to apply the growth rate used for Model Y and Model 3, given that this is a fancy sports car that is very expensive. Let's assume the deliveries of Roadster 2 will grow by 100% in 2021, 50% in 2022, and from that moment onwards, we'll be in our usual cycle of 10% growth for 2 years, 5% for another 2 years, and 2% from that moment onwards. Here's how to calculate actual deliveries. All right. The last 2 models Tesla plans to introduce at some point in 2019 or 2020 are the Tesla Pickup and the Tesla Semi-Truck. Both of them have seen strong interest from customers, especially the Tesla Semi-Truck, with multiple pre-orders for 100 and more vehicles coming from companies like Pepsi. Let's assume Tesla will deliver 250 units of both the Tesla Pickup and Tesla Semi in 2019. Then, we'll also assume the growth of both vehicles will mirror the one of Model 3 and Model Y. These are commercial vehicles, but starting from a low delivery value for 2019 doesn't make our forecast too aggressive. All right, now I'll calculate the actual deliveries for Tesla Pickup and Tesla Semi in absolute terms. It took us a while, but I think we got there. These are the total delivery figures planned for Tesla. Somebody can rightly ask, hey, what if Tesla introduces other new models during this time frame? And that's a question that has plenty of merit. However, I believe we've also been a bit generous when planning Model 3, Model Y, and Tesla Pickup growth. Moreover, it is yet to be seen how Tesla will cope with production factory constraints. Anyway, the number of vehicles delivered is the very foundation of our model. It is great that we spent some time to get it right.